Well, I want to say, if you're watching this on January 1st, Happy New Year. And if you're watching it beyond that, well, I still hope you have a Happy New Year. But I believe that we need, more than any other year in memory, we really need a Happy New Year. And so I want to go in that direction today and talk about how we can maybe get off on the right foot and have a happy new year. Mark chapter 5 and verse 25. It says, "Now a certain woman had a flow of blood 12 years and had suffered many things from many physicians. She had spent all that she had and was no better, but rather she grew worse. When she heard about Jesus, she came behind him in a crowd and touched his garment, for she said, 'If only I may touch his clothes, I shall be made well.' Immediately the fountain of her blood was dried up, and she felt in her body that she was healed of her affliction. And Jesus, immediately knowing in himself that power had gone out of him, turned around in the crowd and said, 'Who touched my clothes?' But his disciples said to him, 'You see the multitude thronging you, and you say, Who touched me?' And he looked around to see her who had done this thing. But the woman, fearing, trembling, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell down before him and told him the whole truth. And he said to her, 'Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your affliction.'" And today I'd like for you to just imagine reaching out in the worst year as we come out of, in the worst year in recent memory. I mean, consistently just difficult at every turn. And picture Jesus standing right before us on January the 1st. And I want you to picture yourself reaching out and just by faith saying, "Lord, when I reach out and touch you, I'm going to be blessed. My family's going to be blessed. This year is going to be blessed. And I want to feel your presence." She felt his virtue. She felt a difference. And I want to feel a difference this year. I want to feel a difference going into this year. I want there to be a difference in this year. And I am praying, God, allow 2021 to be everything that 2020 was not. And fill in the void that was created by it, and the battles that we've had to fight, and all the things that we've been through. And there are some that are dealing with sickness and sorrow from losing family members from this past year. And I pray that we can just reach out in faith and touch him this year and say, "God, I want you to be that close to me because we need you." The depth of this woman's despair really is what caused her to get to that point where she said, "If I can touch him, I'll be made well," because she had no other hope. She had spent all her money on doctors that only made her worse. And she built everything up in Jesus and said, "He is going to be my only hope." And we all must build bridges from time to time. And sometimes we need to build bridges of relationships back the way they used to be. We need to build bridges of relationships between us and the church and get back in that flow of worshiping God on a regular basis, if at all possible. You know, and it's always due to the space between where you are and where you need to be. And COVID, to a great degree, has widened that space. And it has given people a license, it would seem, to do things they would not have done ever. I couldn't picture people being the way they are. But this has put people in a place where they've been allowed to drift and drift and drift until some have just left the church entirely. And I'm not talking about just Grace Point. I'm talking about the church in general. I have I've been in contact with pastor friends who have been amazed at people, faithful, solid people who have just said, we're not going to do this anymore. We're just too weary. We just suffered too much. I want to encourage you today to reach out and touch a God that is so very able to bear your burdens, to bless you in a way that you've experienced all of your loss and make up that difference. And we have to build bridges from time to time, and it's always due to the space between where you are and really where you need to be. And that's what COVID has done, is it has taken us out of order. To me, I was likening the church to one of those soda machines, that you see, and you are looking forward to something there, and as you get closer to it, you see somebody has a handwritten sticker with Scotch tape, and it just says out of order. And then you wonder, is it really out of order, or did just that person have a bad experience? But somebody is trying to tell everybody else, this thing doesn't work anymore. And I want to take the stickers off of the various places in our life and in the areas where we're suffering that say out of order. And I want to remove those tags and say, Lord, put us back today where we need to be. And we can get back there. Your awareness of your needs really is a sign of spiritual maturity. When you can look at your life and say, I need to get back. When you can understand the difference, then you can touch him for that release and that power. We need to examine ourselves and say, where are we now? And where am I in relation to last year at this time? Well, I remember we had so much hope. We had so many plans, and it seemed like it was going to be a great year. But I'll tell you this, preaching, teaching, and living make us aware of these things. And we must receive these things and let it have a place in our heart. Let it challenge you to say, God, with every word I hear, with every word that I read of yours, I want to take a step back. I want to make up lost ground. See, this woman who we only really get a glimpse of was praised for this desperate faith that she had. She had suffered 12 years and it was worse than when she started. And so for her, it wasn't about her past or her attendance record. Her desperate condition, it caused her to be at the mercy of chance and faith. She goes, that's my only options, is this touch right here is going to be it. If I can just touch the edge of his clothes. When we get to that desperation point, first of all, what she did is she looked to Jesus. And we need to get our eyes off of any other distractions that's taken our victory, taking our strength, and stealing our faith, and get our eyes back on the Lord today on a consistent basis. And her words were her words to her and herself alone. Our words, think about this, our words can cause a shift in our direction. And all we've got to do to start going downhill is to think in our mind and say, you know what, I just don't think the church is, and I don't believe the church has. And if we can begin to think that, there's a very dangerous thing that can happen next. We can go to somebody, could be a friend, could be a spouse, could be somebody that's in the same ditch that you are. And if we say, it seems like the church is just, and if it's a downward step, immediately it elevates us in our flesh from where we feel we've fallen, and makes us feel justified for sitting in that ditch and say, I think we're all right. I think the problem is there. We've got to be very careful of falling in that ditch to where we blame the church for our condition, because our walk with God isn't predicated on attendance. It's predicated on relationship. And that relationship with God, it's strengthened by preaching and by teaching and by fellowship. And so when we miss church, we miss that undergirding that strengthens our faith and our walk with God. And we must be honest with ourselves and say, you know what? No matter what I see that's different, the Bible tells me if I will pray with faith, believing that God will give me the desires of my heart. So now what I have to do is say, Lord, let me be honest with myself. Have I changed in my posture? Have I changed in my position of prayer? Am I being faithful to this day? And the same God that we had a year ago, we have today. But it's my hope and prayer we're coming out of this. Lord Jesus, please let that be. But Jesus was moved with this woman's faith and her desperation, and he's never changing. God never changes. What he was then, when that woman touched him, he is today. He's still touched with the feeling of our sicknesses or our infirmities. He felt the release to her, to help her. He felt the release of his power that healed her. Her faith healed her. Always remember that. Her faith is what healed her. Jesus was always available. He always is. We must reach out and touch him every day of our life. Let this year be the year. As we start off on January 1st, Lord, let me touch you every day. John 4:5-14. So he came to a city of Samaria, which is called Sychar, near the plot of ground that Jacob gave to his son Joseph. Now, Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, therefore, being wearied from his journey, sat thus by the well, and it was about the 6th hour. A woman of Samaria came to draw water, and Jesus said to her, now remember, Jesus told the disciples, you go in there and buy food. I'm just going to sit out here for a while. And in their mind, he was sitting there because, well, it was hot and they were weary from their journey, and he's probably tired. He knew when he sat down, he was waiting on somebody that was about to come out. And that woman came out to draw water, and he said, give me a drink. For his disciples was in there to buy food. And the woman of Samaria said to him, how is it that you, being a Jew, ask a drink from me, a Samaritan woman? For Jews have no dealings with Samaritans. And what she was saying is, you see me as lower class than you, but yet you're asking me to give you a drink. For the Jews have no dealings with the Samaritans. Jesus answered and said to her, if you knew the gift of God, if you knew the gift of God and who it is that says to you, give me a drink, you would have asked him and he would have given you living water. The woman said to him, sir, you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. She was trying to explain the reasons why this was not going to work out. You don't have anything to draw it, and the well is deep. Where are you going to get this living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us the well and drank from it himself as his sons and his livestock? Jesus answered and said to her, whoever drinks of this water is going to thirst again. But whoever drinks of the water that I shall give him will never thirst. But the water that I shall give him will become. Now think about that just for a moment. The well that he gives us, the experience of the Holy Ghost in our soul, will become a fountain of water springing up into everlasting life. It will become. We can live on the edge and get by with a sip every now and then, or we can have the well of water springing up. The woman of Samaria was mired in shame and doubt. But Jesus didn't, walk by waiting on this woman to touch his garment. He already knew about it. He'd already had that happen to him before. But this one, he reached out to her. This one was one that he knew her condition already. And he brought her issue to the surface and then began to let her know that he knew. Jesus does that. In this story, he just went to the well and waited for that person. And I'll tell you today, I don't know what condition you are if you compare yourself to this time last year. I know we're just all tired. We're all weary. We'd love to just emerge out of this pandemic. And I know it. I've said it. I've mentioned it almost in all of my devotions. And the pandemic is what even prompted me to begin these daily devotions. And so I really want this to be a help to you, not only a challenge, but I want it to be something that builds up your faith. But in this story, Jesus went to that well. He waited for that woman to come and drink. And so we need two things I can think of right now. We being saved, or you're needing to be saved, must drink from that well of salvation. We cannot just talk about that drink we had, because we need to go back to the well and drink from that fountain, from that flowing river of living water. We must drink from it every day to offset the thirst caused by the world that we live in every day. Paul said in Romans 10 and 1 through 14, brethren, I'm not going to read all of these verses, but I want to start with it. He said, my heart's desire and prayer to God for Israel is that they may be saved. For I bear them witness that they have a zeal for God, but not according to knowledge. For they, being ignorant of God's righteousness and seeking to establish their own righteousness, have not submitted to the righteousness of God. For Moses writes about the righteousness which is of the law, the man who does those things shall live by them. But the righteousness of faith speaks in this way. Do not say in your heart, who will ascend into heaven, that is to bring Christ down from above, or who will descend into the abyss, that is to bring Christ up from the dead. But what does it say? The word is near you, in your mouth and in your heart. That is the word of faith which we preach. That if you confess with your mouth the Lord Jesus and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you'll be saved. He is as close as the mention of his name. He made himself available. He's sitting right by the well where you're going for help. He's going to be right where you're looking for him. When you go to him in prayer, he's right there waiting on you. He's as close as the mention of his name. An old Hebrew saying would talk about going to the depth of the sea or to the heights of the heaven, but no such journey is necessary here to bring the presence of God. Believing on him and calling on his name, that is the answer. This is basic, but sometimes I need to remind myself of the basics. It's a well of water. He is that water. He is that well. He is that oil that fills us, that keeps our lamps burning bright. And so I don't need to make a journey some faraway place. I just need to stop and say, Jesus, you're waiting on me now. And I need you to fill the voids. And I need you, and we need him to restore everything that this past year has messed up, torn up, ripped apart. He can restore us back. We need to get back to where we were 1 year ago. We need to get back. Believing on him and calling on his name is the answer. He comes when we ask with faith believing. Think about this. God is here. He's willing and he's able. You call and God responds. The call is not the response. It creates the response. And coming out of what has been, as I said, the strangest and most distressing year in memory, we must shake off the weariness and the fatigue of COVID that it's brought to us. And as Isaiah said, mount up with wings as eagles, run and not be weary. You will walk and not faint. That's a promise from God. Church, we are going to run and not be weary. And as we walk, we will not faint. I want us, and I want to encourage you to wait on the Lord, call on his name, because I know that God's got some blessings in store for us and for you individually this very day. God bless you.